In this video, I will discuss about the epic poem The Iliad. So let's start our lesson. At first, I will talk about Homer. Many people believe no such person ever existed. Homer is a pseudonym uniting the works of many authors from various time periods. Nothing is known of Homer's life. Many others believe that he was a blind court singer in the 8th century BC. Now come to the historical context. The events of the Iliad refer to the Trojan War, a semi-mythical conflict that was supposedly waged sometime between 1300 and 1000 BC. The facts of the war would have been passed down through the ancient Greek oral tradition, to which Iliad owes a great deal. Whether or not the Iliad refers to real event is still an open question, subject of heating debate. Now, key facts about the Iliad. When written, uncertain but dated to around 710 to 760 BC. Where written, unknown. Where written, unknown. When published, around 10th century Anno Domini. Full title, The Iliad. Literary period, that was classical or ancient Greek period. Genre, epic poem. Setting of the epic poem, city of Troy, the northwest coast of Anatolia, now Turkey. Antagonist, Hector, Paris, Apollo, Aphrodite. Climax, the slaying of Hector by Achilles. Point of view, third person narrative, omniscient narrator. Now we discuss about mythology background of the Iliad. It is the mythology background written by Michael J. Cummings. Let's start. In the ancient Mediterranean world, feminine beauty reaches its zenith in Helen, wife of King Menelaus of Greece. Her wondrous face and body are without flaw. She is perfect. Even the goddess of love, Aphrodite, admires her. While Aphrodite competes with other goddesses in a beauty contest in which a golden apple is to be awarded as the prize, she bribes the judge, a young Trojan named Paris. She promises him the most ravishing woman in the world, Helen, if he will select her Aphrodite as the most beautiful goddess. After winning the contest and receiving the coveted golden apple, she tells Paris about Helen and her incomparable pulchritude. Forthwith, Paris goes to Greece, woos Helen, and absconds with her to Troy, a walled city in Asia Minor in present-day Turkey. The elopement is an affront to all the Greeks. How dare an upstart Trojan invade their land? How dare he steal the wife of one of their kings? Which Greek family would be next to fall victim to a Trojan machination? Infuriated, King Menelaus and his friends assemble a mighty army that includes the finest warriors in the land. Together they cross the sea in 1,000 ships to make war against Troy and win back their pride and Helen. But the war drags on and on. Weeks become months, months become years, years become a decade. It is in fact in the 10th year of the war that Homer picks up the thread of the story and spins his tale, focusing on a crisis in the Greek ranks in which the greatest soldier in history, Achilles, decided to withdraw from the battle and allows his fellow Greeks to fend for themselves. It is Achilles who is the central figure in the Iliad. Homer begins with a one paragraph invocation requesting the muse, a goddess, to inspire him in the telling of his tale. Such an invocation was a convention in classical literature, notably in epics from the time of Homer onward. Now we will discuss about the story. Paris, also known as Alexander, was a prince of Troy, a kingdom in Asia Minor. During his travels, he was a guest of Menelaus, a king in Sparta. Menelaus' wife was Helen, a woman of legendary beauty. She and Paris fell in love. He took her with him back to Troy. The rulers of the Greek kingdom the rulers of the Greek kingdoms raised a powerful army and a fleet of over 1,000 ships to win back Helen with strength of arms. Led by Agamemnon, Menelaus' older brother, the Greeks sailed for Troy and began a war that was destined to last for 10 long years. Book 1 Summary. In the 10th and final year of the Trojan War, the fighting is temporarily stalemated. While on a previous raid, Agamemnon, commander in chief of the Achaean forces, has taken as plunder the beautiful girl Chryseis. Chryseis' father, Chryses, is a priest of the god Apollo. Chryses pays a visit to Agamemnon, treating him with great respect and courtesy, and offering a opulent ransom in exchange for the freedom of his daughter. Although the Achaeans cry out their approval for Chryses' request, Agamemnon refuses to grant it. He threatens to kill Chryses if the priest should ever come into Agamemnon's presence again. Chryses flees, but he prays to Apollo for vengeance and justice. The god, angered by Agamemnon's disrespect for his priest, rains arrow on the Achaeans. The result is a horrible plague as men and animals die mysteriously for 9 days. On the 10th day, Achilles calls the Greeks to assembly. The idea put into his head by goddess Hera, who sides with the Achaeans against Troy. Achilles asks for some prophet or seer to tell him that what was caused the plague and what must be done to end it. Calchas, a great prophet, says that he knows the answer, but he makes Achilles vow to protect him once he was revealed it. Achilles vows and Calchas tells them that the plague has been sent by Apollo in punishment for Agamemnon's treatment of Chryses. To atone for the sin, the Achaeans must give Chryseis back without accepting any ransom, and in addition they must give 100 sacred bulls to Chryses for sacrifice. Agamemnon is furious with Calchas, saying that the seer enjoys delivering evil prophecies. But the king agrees to give up the girl. He insists, however, that one of the Achaeans give him a prize to compensate him for his loss. Achilles is enraged by the request. The plunder has already been distributed, he argues, and a good man does not take back what he has given. Agamemnon and Achilles argue, each man insulting the other. Agamemnon threatens to take a prize if one is not given to him, and Achilles reminds him that all of the Achaeans are fighting against foes who have only wronged Menelaus. For the sake of the two royal brothers, the Achaeans bloody their hands against men who have done them no wrong. Achilles also complains that though he bears the heaviest burden in battle, it is the king who is always greedy for prizes. Achilles refuses to fight anymore. He will go home to Pythia. Agamemnon responds that to compensate for the loss of the Chryseis, he will take Achilles' own prize, the girl Briseis. Because of this dishonor, anger seizes Achilles and he strides toward Agamemnon to kill him. Hera sends the goddess Athena to stop him. Only Achilles can see Athena, who tells him not to kill the king. She promises that Achilles will be justly compensated for this great dishonor. Achilles obeys her, but he vows to Agamemnon that one day the Achaeans will come begging Achilles for help. They will need his protection from Hector, the greatest of the Trojan warriors. And Agamemnon will regret his pride. Nestor, oldest of the Achaean kings, rises and tells the two men that they must listen to him because he is old and has lived and fought with warriors greater than anyone now living. He asks Agamemnon not to take Briseis, Achilles' fairly owned prize, and he tells Achilles that he must respect Agamemnon's position as commander in chief. His words are lost on the two men. Achilles returns to his ships with his companion Patroclus. The Achaeans send the ships to make the sacrifice with Odysseus in charge of the expedition. Meanwhile, Agamemnon sends men to fetch Briseis, who is given up without a fight. Achilles does not resist because the girl was a gift distributed by Agamemnon, and the great warrior feels it is not his place to refuse the king. But Achilles is humiliated and he calls on his mother, the goddess Thetis. She hears him and emerges from her home in the sea. He weeps and asks his mother to help him to win justice. Zeus is in Thetis' debt. In a revolt of the gods in which Zeus was nearly defeated, only Thetis' intervention saved him. Achilles tells her what was happened and asks Thetis to go as a suppliant to Zeus, to ask him to intervene so that the Achaeans might know suffering as long as Achilles does not fight. Thetis responds with sadness. She tells her son that he is destined to die young and will great sorrow, but she agrees to do as he asks. The gods are away for feasting in Ethiopia, but they will return soon and Thetis will make her plea then. Meanwhile, Odysseus delivers Chryseis back to her father and helps the priest to make the sacrifice. Chryseis prays to Apollo to stop the plague. The goddess is appeased. The Achaeans who sailed on the ships bringing the sacred bulls now feast on the meat left over after the sacrifice. The men return to the front where Achilles is still withdrawn into his ship, refusing to fight. The gods return to Olympus and Thetis clasps Zeus's knees, the position of a supplicant, and asks that the Trojan win victory after victory as long as her son does not fight. Zeus is anxious because his wife Hera, queen of the gods, despises the Trojans and will be furious with him. Zeus is anxious because his wife, Hera, queen of the gods, despises the Trojans and will be furious with him. But he agrees. When he returns to his house, where all the goddesses are assembled, Hera is waiting in anger for him. She knows that he has been Thetis and fears the disasters that might be brought down on the Achaeans if Zeus decides to help bring Achilles honor. The two argue bitterly until Zeus threatens to harm her and she takes her place quietly. Hephaestus, the god of forge and child of Zeus and Hera, argues his parents not to fight over the fate of mortals. He wants Hera to obey Zeus because he does not wish to see his mother harmed. He serves the gods sweet nectar to drink, beginning with his mother, and the gods feast and listen to songs. As night falls, they return to their beds and sleep, Hera by Zeus' side. Now come to the book 2 summary. In order to lure the Achaeans into disaster, Zeus sends Dream to give Agamemnon a false vision that now is the time to attack the city of Troy. Agamemnon believes the dream and wakes and dresses for battle. He believes he will take Troy that very day. He calls the Achaeans to assembly and tells them about the dream. The troops ready themselves, Zeus' servant rumor buzzing around and exciting them. Agamemnon then gives a speech to the Achaeans, telling them that the war has gone on too long. Though they outnumber the Trojans, they have not captured the city in 9 long years. It is in the 10th year, and Agamemnon tells the troops that they should go home in disgrace. Although Agamemnon is testing the men's courage, the demoralized troops scatter and make for their ships. The shameful retreat is only halted by the actions of Hera and Athena. Athena goes down and argues Odysseus, her favorite, to stop the troops from leaving. Odysseus takes Agamemnon's scepter and runs among the ranks, persuading men and king to stand their ground. When the troops are back in order, the unruly Thersites tries to undo Odysseus' work, insulting Agamemnon and trying to make the troops insubordinate. Odysseus answers him with words and force, arguing against Thersites' statement, insulting Thersites' character and threatening him with physical humiliation, and finally thrashing him with Agamemnon's scepter. The troops are amused and invigorated by the spectacle, and Odysseus reminds them that they promised to fight until they had taken the city of Troy. He also reminds them that before they set sail for Aulis, Calchas interpreted a sign from the gods. They are to take Troy in their 10th year, and this year is the 10th. Nestor berates the troops, reminding them of favorable signs from Zeus seen on the day they set out of Troy. He argues Agamemnon to arrange them by clans and tribes so it will be possible to see which groups are brave and which groups are cowardly. Agamemnon expresses regret over his previous anger with Achilles, but he does not do anything to make amends. The troops get ready, eating dinner and making sacrifices to the gods. The speaker tells us that Zeus accepts the sacrifice but will not grant victory yet. After invoking the Muses so that he can rely on their divine memory, Homer then gives a long, complete list of all the Greek chieftains involved in the Trojan War. He describes their attributes and the number of men they command, as well as their important family members and kingdoms of origin. Near the end, we learn that without Achilles, the best warrior of the Achaean side is Telamonian Ajax or Greater Ajax. Achilles, ruler of the Myrmidons, is by far the greatest Achaean warrior, but he remains out of battle. Ares, messenger of Zeus, warns the Trojans of the coming attack. The Trojans and their allies prepare for battle. Their leader is Priam's son Hector of the Shining Helm, a civilized man and a great warrior. He is their champion. Important also is Aeneas, favored by the gods to survive and be the father of all Trojans afterward. Thank you.